My grandmothers never had the opportunity to go to school or pursue their own dreams. They married young and took care of their families because back then, the best thing a woman could be is a loving wife or a fruitful mother. Or at least that's what society told us. And despite the progress we've made since then, there is still far too much pressure to conform to societal's expectations of physical attractiveness. By the age of 8, practically every girl in my school had waxed their entire bodies. And you know, I didn't want to feel left out. My friends would wear shapewear 2 to 3 sizes too small to look thinner and constrict how much they could physically eat at lunch during school. At our Catholic school, we were separated from the boys and instructed that showing our legs and shoulders was sinful and that it could distract and tempt the grown men that worked there. We were just little girls. And society told us that we should aspire to marry, not to go to school, to be a size 0 instead of being happy, and to blame ourselves for what we were wearing. These mindsets can ruin your self-confidence, image, aspirations, dreams, your mental health, and your life. From the way society treats eating disorders, to blaming survivors for being victims, to grooming girls to not think that they can pursue their dreams. What we learn as children shapes us, and sometimes for the worse. I am incredibly thankful that my mother worked so hard to try to break the mold of the generations that came before us. But there's only so much 1 or 2 people can do in the face of societal's crushing expectations, in the face of beauty standards that span from TV to social media to magazines, in the face of religious and cultural traditions that extend back centuries. Which is why one of the most powerful things we can do, one of the most meaningful ways we can reclaim our lives, is to unlearn these mindsets and expectations that hold us back and don't serve us. It isn't easy, but we owe it to ourselves to try and live our truth, to become our most authentic selves, and to live a life without regret that isn't shaped by what society or others told us we could or could not be. That's what unlearning is all about. It's about understanding why we feel the way we do, how we physically react in the face or presence of difficult emotions or conflict or stress. Do we shut down in the face of conflict? Do we avoid it? Or do we respond forcibly and with uncontrollable emotion? Author Leon Brown says, every day you must unlearn the ways that hold you back. You must rid yourself of negativity so you can learn to fly. And it's true. It's hard to fly when you have the weight of all the things you've left unsaid, from all the baggage you're carrying from your relationship, friendships, and our respective cultures. We live in a society that reinforces toxic mentality. I viewed gaining weight as my enemy until I realized that my body wasn't working against me, but it was working with me and keeping me alive. Until I remember that some of the most powerful women in our lives, our mothers, our sisters, our aunts, have bodies that come in all sizes, and that true beauty comes from within. I remember, like many Latinas growing up, believing that marriage was the most important thing I could aspire to do. I even had a wedding box full of ideas and magazines I kept under my bed. When I found out that I got into a great university in the United States, a family member responded, but no boyfriend yet? Which is all too common for many Latinas. And that mindset may have been what prevailed if it wasn't for my mother that urged me to take a leap of faith, pursue my education, even if it was far from home. That wedding box stayed under my bed when I left the United States. I knew I wasn't meant to just be someone's wife. It was to be a student, to be an entrepreneur, to be someone who sees and travels the world, to be a liberated woman that isn't defined by their relationship to a man. It can take years and years to unlearn some of these mindsets, expectations, and beliefs. And in some parts of the world, especially in areas where women are subjugated and have their freedoms restricted, and so deeply ingrained in their family and culture that it's just seen as the way life is. When we had the idea to put on workshops and forums for women from all walks of life and from countries around the globe to build their professional skills, to give them an opportunity to network, to provide them with a safe space where they could talk about their lives, their hopes, their dreams, I had no idea the impact it would have. Some of these women had never been told that they were smart. Many had never been in a space occupied primarily by women. And many had never talked out loud to anyone about their mental health or family trauma or the violence they've experienced. One of the most powerful things we can do is to give others space and ourselves to be vulnerable, to be upset, and to be our authentic selves, and to encourage each other to do so. One Saturday morning, I was sitting at my favorite coffee shop with a friend, and we were talking about a women's forum that we were putting on and going through the checklist of what still needed to be done. When we got to the part where we still needed a photographer, a young woman, just around our age, approached the table. She told us that she was a photographer and that she was looking to build her portfolio and that she would love to photograph the event. And I said, yes, great. It was one less thing I had to worry about. She did an amazing job. And she later told me that it was so uplifting being in a space by women and for women to finally be able to talk about anything. When it was her chance to share her story, she said that on a Saturday morning at a coffee shop, she was considering taking her own life, unless something gave her a sign to keep on going and keep on fighting. That seemingly random interaction saved her life. In this forum, this group of women from all walks of life, accepting her as a sister, gave her the courage to continue fighting and the bravery to share her story with us. The process of unlearning might sound like some catchy phrase you see on social media or a self-help book you might mock as you browse your favorite bookstore. But the reality is, it matters. Your ability to unlearn a low self-esteem or lack of self-worth, when you're finally able to talk out loud to someone about the things that you've never said before, and when you soon realize that you're not alone, and that there are so many other people going through something similar, it saves lives. My life has been a series of letting go of what no longer serves me. For a moment, I invite you to close your eyes and take your attention inward. Take a deep inhale and a slow exhale. And with every breath, slow down your breathing. Picture yourself when you were younger. Notice how old you are, what you are doing. How does it feel? Is it cold, warm, colorful, dark? Just trust that whatever you are experiencing is real. And give that child a hug, a tight hug. Notice how you feel when you nurture yourself. And promise yourself in this moment that you are going to listen to what you need, that you are going to do what you love, and that you are going to make space for unlearning. Now is a good time to give yourself one last big warm hug. Open your eyes. This was my process for unlearning. It was uncomfortable and oftentimes overwhelming. But I realized that the more I visited my inner child, the more I learned how to love myself. The lighter I got and the more I had to give. I know that any time I feel lost or disconnected or overwhelmed, I go back to that space. I give myself a hug. And I take one deep breath in and one slow exhale out. I hope that in the coming days and weeks that you go back to that space, that you pay attention to the things that you need, what holds pain and unnecessary stress in your life, and instead begin to reflect on the way that you talk to yourself and communicate your needs. You know, I often think about my grandmothers. I think about the ways that they had to conform, what society told them they could or could not be, the many times they had to swallow their thoughts and how that shaped them and limited them. And even though they didn't have a chance to unlearn back then, we do now. It isn't easy, but you owe it to yourself to speak your truth, to be your authentic self. Now let me ask you, what are you going to go and unlearn? Thank you.